No is the most powerful two-letter word in the world. Chances are when I use the word no and powerful together, your mind immediately steers toward the negative, doesn't it? Other words get associated to the word no. Rejection, defeat, failure, loser, stupid, not good enough. So it's no wonder that we steer clear and avoid the no at all cost. But only going for yes is actually risky because you begin to judge what you have or don't have. You become selective and you rob yourself of so many valuable opportunities because you were looking for a sure thing. Why not go for no? Says my guest, author Andrea Waltz. She and her husband believe in it so much that they wrote a book on it, Go for No. And they've made it their life's mission to help others change their relationship with that tiny two-letter word. You're listening to The Sales Life, a top 5% podcast in the world. I'm your host, Marsh Buice. Today, you'll hear why yes is the destination and no is how you get there. Stick around till the end because I have 2 questions and a challenge for you. Enjoy today's episode. My guest today is Andrea Waltz, co-author of the book Go for No. Yes is the destination and no is how you get there. Andrea, thank you so much for coming onto the Sales Life.
I am so glad to be with you, Marsh. Thanks for having me.
You pinned to your Twitter profile that we just crossed 3,000 reviews, and it only took us 14 years to get there. And when I look at the reviews, and most of them, like Andrea, 93% of them are 4 and 5-star reviews. And when you look at the comments, it's this book changed my life. I wish I would have read it sooner. This book will change your life. It changes your relationship with no. Why is a little 80-page book so impactful for so many people, do you think?
I love that question. Thank you. I think it's just because it's a fable, and I think that's a big part of it. Because people connect emotionally to the character. We kind of made the character not a superstar salesperson, but he's also not horrible. He's just average.
Mhm.
And I know nobody wants to think of themselves as average, but we wanted him to be relatable. And so I think people can kind of put themselves in his place and say, this is kind of how I am. I want to do well, but I struggle with like kind of the day to day and so I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part of it is just the topic. Rejection and failure, and the fear of rejection and the fear of failure is universal. We're
Mhm.
all biologically wired to have those fears, and then we all deal with them in sales, we deal with them in life. So I think when you kind of combine those two, it's had impact, and I'm so glad that it has because I'm so passionate about this topic. It has now become, weirdly enough, my life's mission, my life's work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you definitely embody the Go for No methodology that you and Richard Fenton have written about. Yeah, for everybody, everybody sees they can look at where your life is right now. But there was a then. So before we get into the overview of the book, walk me through the early beginnings, Andrea, of from the concept of the book to launching it to taking that leap and then the early beginnings from there.
So I got a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice, and I wanted to be a crime scene investigator. I wanted to be one of those CSI people on the TV show before it was even popular, before it was a thing, before it was a TV show. And they were like, it's a very coveted spot. The sheriff's department was telling me maybe you can be an intern and work for free for a couple years. In
Mm,
the meantime, which I was really not interested in doing at that point as a starving. I was tired of being a starving college student. So at the time I was also working for Lens Crafters, and I had worked my way up and they were ready to promote me full time into management, and I did that. And I was really successful at it and I absolutely loved it. And that's where I met Richard Fenton.
mm,
He basically taught me go for no, taught me this idea. And I actually didn't think that I had a big challenge around rejection, but I had to get honest and realize that actually I did. But in the meantime of that, while we were both working at the company, we realized that we had the same sales philosophies, customer service type philosophies, management philosophies. So Richard comes to me one day and says, "I think we should write a book." It wasn't Go for No, it was a different book. It was called
mm,
Unlocking the Secrets of Retail Magic.
mm,
And he said we could write this book and then eventually we could use this book to kind of catapult us out of these jobs and into our own business. Eventually we'll have to quit our jobs. And I was thinking like, all right, well, that sounds a little crazy, but I'm game. And eventually we did. We quit. We had a little safety net, but not much. And I had no idea what I was doing. I went from B2C sales to B2B, where I was, cold calling VP of training and VP of HR, mostly in the retail industry. And we were selling uh, our training workshops, basically,
mhm,
sales training, and that included Go for No. And somehow a couple good things happened. We went for no a lot. And we got a couple yeses right when we needed them. And then Richard finally said, I think we started seeing like we would do a workshop and we would see the thing that people really walked away with was Go for No. That's what would be on their minds. That was the thing. And he said, I think we should write a book called, a book. He didn't call it Go for No. He said a book about Go for No, and we should make it a fable. And I was like, I don't know. I think we should just write like a straight up, let's not make it a fable, just instructional kind of how to do this. But my husband is a creative genius and he was like, no, no, let's write a fable. So I eventually agreed and we wrote Go for No, and that was in 2000. We ordered like 5,000 copies, got them all shipped. And the very first thing that we knew, one of the things that we knew we had to do was to get the book in the hands of decision makers, of influencers. So we bought a mailing list. We spent a ton of money. We sent out 500 copies to VP of sales all over the country, and it was like crickets.
mm.
Nothing happened. So we started to convince ourselves that the post office maybe just didn't want to ship all these books, so they just threw them in the trash. Like maybe that's what happened. And unfortunately, we did get an order. We got an order for 50 copies. We had put an order form in these books because our vision was every salesperson needs to read this. And so these VPs are going to get this book, they're going to read it, and they're going to buy, hundreds, if not thousands of copies. So we got it one order and we said, okay,
Do
they
you
probably
remember who your first order was?
I did it. I do. It was Ditech Funding. It was a financial what did they do? Like home mortgages and things
Yeah,
and
okay.
refis and things like that. So it was for 50 copies. So we're like excited that we got this order, but on the other hand, we realized that 499 other people said no. So we said, okay, this is going to be a lot harder than we thought. So we proceeded to basically hit our heads against the wall for the next few years, just giving away copies and promoting the book. And it got we'd get a little traction here and there, and then we just got so many no's along the way. And then finally, a few years in, we were at a conference and we would always bring books with us and give them to people. And we gave a copy to this guy who was sitting in front of us because I had overheard he was in sales. And he called us a couple days later and he said, "Are you guys open minded?" Um, which of course we like to think we're open-minded, right? We all like to think that. So we
Yeah.
said, well, of course we're open-minded. He said, okay, well, I want to give you some feedback about your book. First of all, he said, it's one of the best, greatest sales books I've ever read. Like, and I've read all of them. He's like, it's one of the greatest sales books ever written, but you have one of the worst covers in the history of publishing. And we said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "If you're willing to change the cover," he said, I wanna buy 5,000 copies." So we
Holy
said,
cow.
yeah, so we said, "Absolutely, we'll change the cover." So the cover that is on the book right now is directly because of this guy, Tom Schaff, calling us and saying, "You guys need to change the cover. It needs to be professional." And that was one of the big mistakes we made is
Yeah.
we were always, um technology wasn't like today, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't jump on Canva and make graphic style
Mhm.
memes and artwork that anybody can do now with graphics. So we kind of bootstrapped it and we made our own cover on Word. Richard actually did it because he also likes to think he is just such an artist,
Yeah.
but not with book covers. So so it was really bad, and the cover was just like this red and black muddy, cover that just said "Go for no." That's basically all it said. So
So did it have the byline then? Or did the byline come later? Because the byline's just incredible.
oh, the you mean the subtitle?
Yeah, subtitle, thank you,
Of
sorry.
yes is the it did say yes is the destination, no is how you get there.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think people were literally judging the book by its cover, which is fair. That's what people do,
yeah.
and I think that was one of the reasons why we were so challenged. In fact, Tom even said, he's like, "I almost didn't even look at your book." In fact,
Mhm.
says he threw it away and then later went and picked it up out of the trash because he felt kind of bad and started flipping through it and then read it standing near the trash can and realized, okay, this is a good book, but these guys need help.
Yeah.
And that helped our confidence. So sometimes having a champion and being open-minded to that critical feedback, even though it was painful to hear, we said, he's probably right. I mean, he must be right because we're just getting nothing but no's for the most part. So we changed it. And that went a long way to our confidence to just keep pushing and keep pushing. And then finally in 2010, so this is 10 years into this process, we hit number one on Amazon's sales and selling list.
10 years it took.
10 years,
Wow.
yes. But and the whole time we're just working on it and working on it and developing more content around it and speaking. We're speaking this whole time and teaching Go for No, but we knew that the book was gonna be a great door opener. And so ever since then, we have just continued to kind of do more of the same to just I mean, there's so many people that still need to hear this message. And I know
Yeah.
a lot of
Mhm.
speakers in our position, they come out with a new concept or new idea every couple years. Nothing wrong with that. I
Mhm.
think that's, their prerogative. And sometimes people get tired of talking about the same thing. I don't. I can say the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, I think no matter what, you have a timeless book, and it's so simple in its nature. It's just one of those V8 moment kind of books where you just kind of look at it and you're like, damn, yes. And you read something like that, but even, it's been out what, 20 plus years,
Mhm.
and it seems to just move along with whatever's going on in life, because that's one thing that will never change is no. But one thing that has the opportunity to change is your relationship with it. So, what I find intriguing, Andrea, is you guys didn't start off in your leap with Go for No. It was the other book, and you picked up Go for No along the way. Is that right?
Yeah, so when we started, we had the Go for No message. In fact, we incorporated that into our book for retailers, and it was definitely one of the things that we were out there teaching. Um, but then what we saw was that Go for No was the thing, and eventually we also just didn't wanna stay in that little niche of specialty.
Mhm.
We were seeing that the people buying Go for No were people in insurance and people financial planners and car sales and direct sales. So we were seeing like we've got all of these people who need this message. Maybe let's write Go for No and then we can start to pivot our speaking business and our training business and start working with different companies. So that
Yeah.
was kind of our thought, and that took a lot longer than we had hoped, but things always take longer than you think. And of course, back then there was really no social media, so it came back to how do we now get the word out that because we were really known in the retail industry. Anybody that you like, if you walk through a shopping mall, that was kind of our prospect. So it was how do we get the State Farms of the world to know us and those types of companies. So it became the same thing. It was going back and cold calling and sending packages, sending press kits and things like that to become speakers for their sales conferences. So that's what we did there as well.
Yeah. Well, one thing to keep in mind too, as they listen to your story is, the what it took for you guys to, because 20 years ago the technology wasn't what it is, the self-publishing industry wasn't what it is, the social media definitely wasn't even there. So I mean, you guys were like back of the trunk, door knocking, I would imagine, just literally going for no physically all the time, right?
Totally. I mean, that in those days, and I actually kind of feel that I was lucky because um I think today there's so much. And the number one thing that I hear from people kind of starting in our business of maybe whether it's coaching or training or speaking, writing books, there's so many options to
Mm,
people to get their message out. I mean, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or do a course or do this. We basically, it was like, go to places where your prospect hangs out. So conferences, things of that nature, or track them down, find them and pick up the phone and call them. That was basically it. Or try to get their mailing address and send them a copy of the book, send them something. There weren't a lot of options and there was no social media. So in terms of like, I'm so confused. There's 27 things I can do. There really wasn't. There was like 6 things that you could do, and 3 of them actually worked. And that was just figuring out who's your ideal prospect and tracking them down and interrupting them basically and saying, "Hey, I have something that you might want to look at."
yeah. You write, Andrea, in the book, one of my favorite quotes: if you're not succeeding fast enough, then you're probably not failing fast enough either. And you can't have one without the other. So if you're going to avoid one, you're going to avoid both. So how can failing faster increase someone's odds of success?
And I wish I could take credit for that quote. I wish I could. So that quote, we interviewed a guy named George Campbell, who was great professional speaker, comedian, um, and his persona on stage was Joe Malarkey, and he would basically get up and kind of make fun of he would espouse the virtues of failure
Mhm.
basically, and make fun of some of the success focused stuff that's out there. And he gave us that great quote. What it comes down to and why we merge the idea of hearing no more often with failure is that no is of course seen as a failure, and so many people have like an issue with failure. I actually had somebody message me on LinkedIn a while ago and it has stuck with me. He said, I really think, and I don't think he knew kind of the brand that I've built. He's like, I really think that you guys might want to consider. You talk a lot about failure. It's really more like a setback or an obstacle. It's not really, failure is such a negative word. And we actually use failure, and we say in the book, we want to use the word so that the word doesn't have power over us. People
100%.
literally don't like to hear, let's not use the word failure because
Yeah.
it's so terrible and it's got this bad rap. But when you allow yourself to fail and you allow yourself to not be perfect, I call it giving yourself permission to fail, like we did when we were kids. That is where the success is hiding. Like, how are you going to know if you can make a successful podcast if you don't start podcasting and then on your first podcast have no one listen? and have
Right.
that failure. And then on your second podcast, basically fail because you get one person listening. But of course, the more you do it, then it's 5 listeners and 10 listeners. And before you know it, it's like, well, how did you create this successful podcast? Well, it
Yeah.
wasn't. It started as a failure. It was
Yeah.
nobody was listening, right? And that's just how it works. And I think it works in everything. And one of the things is that's important is for me to always get across to people is it's not just about I think people get uncomfortable because they think it's just you just want me to fail like forever.
Mhm.
No. And that's why you called out so I think perfectly the subtitle of yes is the destination, no is how you get there. Yes, we want yeses, we want success, but it is in this constant desire to protect ourselves, to avoid the discomfort, to avoid the failure, and to care so deeply about what is everybody going to think? What's my family going to think? How is this going to look to people if I do this or that? In that desire, then we're protecting ourselves and we don't give ourselves the opportunity to have that success.
Yeah, do you think it's more so ego driven when people with their relationship with the word failure? Um, do you think that's something that weighs more heavily than anything else is the perception of how they look to other people?
I think that's a lot of it because I wrote a post about this not too long ago, and I basically opened with the idea of I thought about the movie. Of course, now I'm going to forget what it's called. With Will Smith, it's the kind of
Pursuit
end
of
of
happiness?
days. And no,
Oh,
it's the end of days zombie movie where he's alone in I think like New
I Am
York's
Legend.
I Am Legend.
Love that movie.
Yeah, great movie. He's alone and he's like this scientist and
Yeah,
he's trying to get a cure for trying to come up with this cure for what's happened to everybody. Everybody's turned into zombies.
right.
And so my premise was what would it be like if you were him and you were all alone? Would you care what kind of car you drove? Would you care, how you looked? Would
Mm.
you would really be focused entirely on survival. So to the standpoint that Will Smith looks absolutely fantastic in this movie, right? He's completely he looks great, but he
Makes us
has
all get on the treadmill, right?
exactly. Like he says, he'll never be beat on that. You can't beat his
Right,
work ethic,
right.
which I absolutely love. He's so inspiring. But you see him and you go like, okay, well, the reason he is that way is because he has to survive. So of course
Mm.
he's doing what he can to survive. But if you're all alone, think about it. Would you care how many mistakes you made? Would you care if you looked like an idiot? And I've I've asked people, what's your biggest fear? And I've polled people who've been in our courses and people who follow us. And the number one thing is not making a fool of myself. That's my biggest issue in front of somebody else, and certainly somebody else of greater stature. I think there's like a lot of it is that perception that someone else is more successful than you
Yeah.
or whatever, whether it's money or whether they have a big following or whether they're, quote unquote, like a big successful celebrity or famous person. So I think you're right. I think that's a big, big part of it. And as a society, we are taught to be ashamed of our failures. That
Mm.
you come, even social media, it's all about here's here's how much I bench pressed, here's how much money I made, here's this, here's that. It's not about we don't go out of our way to show all of the mistakes and all of the failures. That's but that is where behind the scenes where we learn we just don't promote that. And so in doing so, you can't help but get the underlying message, I shouldn't fail.
I love that. And as you're saying that, and I love the analogy with I Am Legend because going back as you're sitting there saying that, when I got demoted, I was third in command, and it was the best thing. I was just talking about this yesterday with one of my salespeople, and I said the demotion was the best thing that ever happened for my life, because at that point, I was the epitome of failure. And I was at the bottom rung. And It was at that point, Andrea, though, I didn't care I didn't care what anybody thought anymore. The initial yes, was it a bruise to my ego? Absolutely. But, when I got demoted and the guy who took my place, he said, "Look, we're going to," and it's still at the dealership that I work at now. And I've worked my way back up through the ranks. But when I first got demoted, they told me, they said, one of the senior managers who took my spot, he said, "Marsh, look, we'll just tell people that we've decided to, make a shift at the dealership." And I said, "No, I'm gonna tell people that I got demoted." And it was, Andrea, when I did that, stripped away any pretenses, or I didn't have to keep living a lie. And so when old customers would come back, because I've been at this dealership for 24 years, when customers would say, "What are you doing back here?" I'd tell them I got demoted.
Hmm.
But it was at that point where it speaks to what you're saying, when you don't care what anybody else says, it was extremely liberating for me. And that's the traction that I was able to get. So I think in so many ways, we've all had certain points of failure in our lives, but don't shield yourself from it. It's something that actually could be a favor to you, many, many years down the road.
Absolutely. I think there's something that Bob Berg shares often. He's the author of the Go Giver series.
Mhm.
And he says, a lot of times we think that we're the only one failing, that we're the only one out there hearing no. And I hear no all the time. I have companies I've wanted to work for, wanted to speak for. I get no. Um, and sometimes I think like, okay, they don't understand the offer. So I go back again and I go back again. And they're like, they literally will say, no, we know about you. We'll call you if we're when we're ready, or if we ever have a need. So it's that personal rejection that, oh, it's not that they don't understand. They very clearly understand what I do, what the message is. They just don't want it. I think they're wrong, but it's just a rejection. So, and I hear no to this day. I think there's this perception that, oh, you get to a certain level and you
Mhm.
don't get rejected, you don't hear no, you don't make mistakes. And oh my gosh, we continue to make mistakes. We're publishers now too, and we've published a lot of books ourselves. We published a few books for other people. I had one book last year that, oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes on it. It was such a disaster. I eventually got it right, but yeah, talk about failing. I mean, it was just ridiculous, and I was waking up every day constantly feeling like, God, what is wrong with you? Like, just get it together, And sometimes you just have those moments where things are just not going your way and you're just failing, and you just learn from it and pick yourself up every day and move on. But we all fail.
Yeah.
And I love that story about your demotion, because people hear that for just a split second and they go and they kind of wrap their head about it. And then they go, okay, let's move on. What's next?
Right. There's no
How can you,
story.
so how can you help me? Like yeah, it's just over.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm curious, as when things didn't work for the book, and the mistakes that you made, was it an oversight on, and not speaking specifically into details, but was it something that you had gotten complacent and had just kind of relied on your past victories, or was it something that I just wasn't adequately prepared and I should have done this? Just curious.
Yeah. More adequately prepared, and, I've definitely had times where I've gotten complacent, no doubt. And I think uh,
Hands raised for me.
and I'll also call out this. I think also when you get to a certain level of success, I also have had times where I feel a little bit entitled. Like,
Yeah,
I have worked really hard. I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, this should be a little bit easier now.
yeah,
And that I think that when it's not easy, I go like, I shouldn't. have to go through this now. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no. Yes, you have to go through it. That's just welcome to life.
Yeah.
So I just coach myself, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're not a victim. Just move on. But from a mistake standpoint, sometimes I don't know, sometimes I wonder like, is this are you sabotaging? Are you sabotaging your success? Why are you making these like really rookie mistakes? So, um I don't know the answer behind that, but that's kind of what that situation was.
Yeah, I wonder that sometimes too. I think I've definitely had some form of self sabotage. I've gotten to different levels of success and then just totally just scorched it. And it was unpacking in my rebirth that I was able to see that different points where I just felt like internally I wasn't deserving. And I think sometimes, speaking of go for no, I think that sometimes is part of that self sabotage, or it eliminates some of the self sabotage when you can actually, put these methodologies in place. And it'll help, because everybody feels like, sometimes we feel we're entitled, but probably more so we feel like we're not deserving of success. And the go for no concept and the methodology is so simple, but when you put these little spots in place, you can actually amplify your success. So walk us through, because we haven't even gotten into the book really. So from a 20,000 overfoot view of walk us through the 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 book. Go
Yeah,
for no.
sure. So our main character, Eric, average salesperson, wakes up one morning, goes to bed, has a weird dream, wakes up the next morning in a house that is this gorgeous house. He doesn't understand where he is. He's very confused. And we see him kind of go through the house and he's checking things out. And he comes to discover that this house is that he comes to discover he's 10 years in the future somehow, and that this house belongs to the 10-year in the future him. He is in this house that he himself owns, but this is a wildly successful future version of him. And he sees that he's written some books and he is the head of this company and he's done all these amazing things. And he actually starts the majority of the book is where he meets his future self and they interact. And the majority of the story is them trying to figure out how this wildly successful version of him came to be and how he is average and what was that situation. And it turns out that this wildly successful future version of him paid attention to a little interaction that happened where he learned the secret of success, which is to go for no, to fail more often. And that the average him didn't learn that lesson, but the successful version of him did learn that lesson. And we kind of end on a little bit of a supernatural, is this real? Was this all a dream thing? But the journey really is, it's almost without us planning it, kind of Wizard of Oz-ish, because at some point it's kind of like, how is he going to get back? How is he going to get
Mhm.
home and to his regular life? And when he gets back to his regular average life, what will he do with that? And we kind of leave the reader on a little bit of a mystery in that respect. But the whole idea is that, and what we want people to walk away with is that failure is good, that if you want more success in life, just intentionally go out and start hearing no more often. And I liken it kind of to being, stuck at a bus stop and sitting there and saying like, I don't know where this bus is going and I don't want to get on and I don't want to make any mistakes. You're better off just getting on the bus and taking it down a few stops, because when you get out, you'll who knows where you'll be, but you'll be
Yeah.
better off. At least you did something. And that's why I think failure is so powerful. And we don't want anyone to, again, do something that hurts someone else. And certainly, that's why airline pilots train, train, train. You don't want to
Mhm.
fail at that. But at some point, a pilot has to get in a plane and fly for the first time and
Mhm.
land.
Mhm.
There's some risk involved. So there's always going to be some personal risk involved.
Yeah. And then you have those, and then you train for those kind of things, and then you have people like Sully, and the the engines go out, and then what do that's where the preparation comes in, and that's where you do, yeah, it could have been catastrophic, but also you're going to find many times that you're going to have these OS moments, these oh shit moments, and you just you hold on to the handles and you figure it out from there. But sometimes that's what wakes you up in life. Sometimes that's life kicking you out of the nest to get you out of your comfort zone. And there's so many opportunities, rich opportunities on that. Curious, they say that, and I know many times when I'm writing my podcast, they tend to start writing themselves. Um, what has writing Go for No taught you after you wrote it? What has it taught you afterwards?
Mm. So, in terms of the lessons in the book, or which I can go so many directions with this. What are you thinking? Anything.
You know, when you okay, so you write the book, you publish it, but then as you speak to it, what are some things that
Oh. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I don't even
Yes.
know if I can really, because I can feel it. I
No,
just
no,
don't.
this is so good. I understand what you're saying. So much has come out of writing the book, and so much there's so much that I talk about today that isn't even in the book.
Mm,
In fact, when Richard and I are on stage together, the majority there's a story that we tell that's in the book. It's kinda like the main signature story, um, of this clothing salesman interaction, which is kind of the crux of the book. But the rest of it is stuff that isn't in the book, and then there's
mm,
times where I'll do a training for people, half hour, hour. I don't tell that story. I don't talk about the majority of things in that book. I might touch on a couple things, like we talk about no goals, setting no goals. So much has come from writing that book that is deeper than when we wrote it. It was kind of like, here are the main lessons. And then in studying it and writing deeper things and being asked questions over the years from people, whether it's on a podcast like this or just people emailing us and asking questions, or us just thinking through it and going like, what else do people need to know? Like when we created our training program, we said, let's come up with 20 core go for no concepts. What are those? What are the things that you need to do to go for no successfully? And I even talk about like things like one of my favorites is go for no versus the law of attraction. How does that work? People freak
mm.
out. They think I'm going to go for no and all I'm going to get is no's. How do I reconcile that in my mind of being negative and having this like engaging my reticular activating system, which is what we focus on, we bring about. And so, well, I just bring about no's. And some of the most successful people who train on that, like Jack Canfield, for example, speaks a lot to the law of attraction.
Yeah.
And he also is a complete advocate and believer of Go for No. He was in our Go for No movie. He talks about the book, recommends it at his seminars. He reconciles the two because it's not about expecting and hoping and wishing and praying for no. It's about accepting it as part of the process.
Mm.
Big difference, right? Big difference of going in,
Wow.
sabotaging and saying, "Oh, I hope this big deal that could change my life completely falls apart." No, we don't want you to think that. We want you to go in with yes energy, positive, do the best you can, prepare. This is not like, "Oh, just be sloppy and fail because failure is great." You should go in and completely mess this thing up and yeah, sabotage it. No, of course not. Do your best, but accept that rejection is out there. It's part of the process. And you could do the best presentation, like answer every question, look fantastic. And they could just look at you and go like, no way, 100%, get the hell out.
Right.
You could also go in and do your best. And we've all had sales. I'm sure you have as such a sales pro where you've been talking to somebody and you're thinking in your head, there's no way this person is
Yeah.
going to say yes. And then
Yes.
and all of a sudden they're like, yeah. done.
Yeah.
Here's my check. And then you got people on the other side who are like, you're thinking this is a done deal, and all of a sudden it completely falls apart. And so we never know what it's going to be. So point being, let me go back to the where I
I
started.
love that. Yeah, this is great. This is great.
So where I started was, yeah, we've learned so much has come from writing the book. We get down, there's so many different nuances and roads that I've been able to go down, which to me is really fun. Because I think
Mhm.
if I just had the book and it was just the concepts in there, that would get boring. But it has and even technology, like, can you go for no on social media? And what does that look like? And what does that feel like? So there's nuances.
Mhm. It's fascinating what you're saying, and I've read your book, I don't know how many times, 8 times
Mhm.
probably, and I've never thought about the law of attraction with go for no, because from a logical standpoint, you go for no, well, you're setting yourself up for no, but it's actually you're attracting a yes, and so many opportunities, but it's being willing to you 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 don't expect a no, but you're willing to accept it. Would that be accurate?
Yes. Yeah, that is accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like if an actor goes into an audition, they can't have energy, which is like, I expect that you're gonna turn me down, right? They've
Mhm,
gotta perform at the highest level
mhm.
as possible. It's the 4 agreements. The first one, always do your best, which, and the other one is, don't take things personally. I love the 4 agreements. It's like
Yeah, I love that book.
my go-to for anybody who struggles with those kind of topics.
Don
S
Miguel Ruiz, is that
Yep, Don
yeah.
Miguel Ruiz. So, yeah, you go in and you do your best, and then you accept it if they call you back and go like, you were good, but you're still 3 inches too short," or something, right? You just go like,
Yeah.
"Alright."
That's great. So, before I get to the, because I want you to walk through the 5 levels of failure. It has to be a little surreal, does it not, to see how you started and then here you are talking with Jack Canfield. Is that did you kind of like, oh my God?
Totally surreal. We were at his house, and I told him, I said, "I almost stole one of your hand towels in your bathroom just to prove I was here." He thought that was pretty funny, and I said, "I just want you to know I didn't, okay?"
Yeah, dude, I would have to be like in that atmosphere, like, how in the hell did I get here? Like, whoa. And I'm sure there's been
Yeah.
many instances like that in your travels. So, walk us through in the few minutes that we have. Walk us through. There's 5 failure levels that that people. I would urge you, as Andrea rails these out, to write these down. Definitely get the book to dig into it more. But this is so key. Can you walk us through the 5 levels?
Sure. So level 1 is the ability to fail. The ability, that's where we all start, 100% of us. Level 2 is the willingness. So a lot of times we can move people into the willingness just listening to a show like this where they hear, the messages and they're kind of like, "All right, I'm willing to fail." Level 3 is wantingness, and this is the hard one because this is where only about 5% of the people get for a sustained period of time, and that is really wanting to fail. That's going to sleep at night going, "I didn't hear no today. I
Mm,
didn't do anything that looks like failure. I just stuck with success and the safe path and didn't fail." Level 4 is a little bit different. It's where we fail bigger, faster, hear no more often. Um, and level 4 is the fun one because this is if you can control who you talk to, um, it's going after those big, scary no's, right? And then level 5 is failing exponentially. And so that's really a function of team leadership where if you can get a team failing together, then team failure equals team success. So you
mhm.
think of the people working, I imagine when I think of this, NASA, you think of Tesla, these people who are out
Yeah.
there who are innovating constantly and they're having all kinds of failures, failure, failure, failure. And then as a team, they have success together because they all failed together.
Well, I think it speaks to the leadership too, and that's the exponential component that you speak to in your book, where, if the leader is being a sniper and trying to only go for the careful yeses, then, you don't like your team, then go look in the mirror. And I think the exponential failure component to that is so key for leadership. Is you control that, and if your team is going to do what you do, and if you're in a closed office, or you're not, you're protecting yourself from the no and just going for the easy yeses, then your team's going to be the same thing also.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're protecting yourself and you're sitting in your office with the door closed on the busy days and on the stressful days and on the painful days, and you're not out there with your team, yeah, they'll have no respect for you. And
Yeah.
so that's a whole other podcast conversation we could have. But from a go for no leader standpoint, we always talk about, hey, celebrate people's no's. They need to see that just because you didn't get the result of the yes doesn't mean that it was a waste. That what did they learn? What can they get better at?
Mhm. What has surprised you most after writing the book, whether it be a segment, an industry segment, or a walk of life? What has been something that was super surprising for you that you're like, I didn't realize my book would land in this kind of people's hands?
Hmm. Um, it's kind of landed everywhere we thought it would. Um, on the other hand, I'll tell you, I know what it is. It's how much, and it's been so. These are the stories that I just it's so crazy. I'll hear from somebody who, like, I heard from somebody in India who read the book to their mother, who was like this Indian woman. I can picture her sitting there probably in her 70s or 80s and read the book and she just loved it. So
Wow.
here's this non-sales person probably who's raised a family and I don't know what they do for a living, but the message and the story resonates with them. So that has been surprising. Also, people who have my friend Jackie Ulmer, she's played the book on CD. She used to play it in her car, and her daughter has heard Go for No like her whole life, like listening in the
Mm,
car over the years. And that's pretty cool. I get a lot of times people will say they've had their kids listen to it,
yeah,
which I never expected.
yeah.
And so that's been fun. But the people I hear from around the world in different places in Africa in different countries and India who say like this book is amazing and I go, "Wow, it translates," and they totally get it. And they have the same struggle.
Yeah, yeah. It's a universal struggle, and your book has a universal element to it that can help people become their best possible selves. And it's so super easy to follow. It's not a book. Number one, it's a book that you can read on a weekend. Number two, it's something that you can instantly apply. So take us home with Andrea, some actions that people can take away, whether you're in the sales profession or you're in the life skills of selling. Um, uh, what are some actions that we can put into place now and apply to our everyday life?
Yeah, I would say first, just create a no awareness. Just look around and ask yourself, like, do I and I had to do this when I first learned it. Like I mentioned to you about getting honest with myself about do I go for no? Do I ever hear no? Do I avoid it? And then so create that no awareness and then start practicing it just in those moments. Your friends and family are the safe no's, right? You ask, your friend, "Hey, do you wanna go grab Chinese food?" And they say, "No." That's a safe no.
Yeah.
So start practicing the safe things and maybe start practicing in weird situations, asking for things. Um, the practice of go for no really comes down to just asking, just having that courage to ask in that moment and that courage to kind of fall on your face and look foolish. I never forget. I hadn't heard a no in a long time. I was at Walmart. This
Mhm.
is so weird, randomly. And so I asked the girl at the young lady at the checkout, I'm like, "So, are there any other coupons or discounts?" And she looked at me. She was so, and she gave me this look. She was so annoyed. She's like, "You're at Walmart." And I went, "Okay, fair. Just ring me up. I'm sorry." I thought, "I'm just gonna go for no." Maybe she'll
Might as
say like, "Yeah,
well.
we've got this $5 coupon," or she'll just tell me no. She told me no. She was pretty annoyed. So just practice. Just have fun with it.
I'd rather hear a no than assume a no. And so many
Yes.
times we judge it and we're like, they're not going to say anything. So hell, just it's the if you ask and it's a no, at least I know that it's a no versus just assuming. Because I won't even have that opportunity that it could be a yes if it's never even put out there. I tell my daughter all the time, "What do you get if you don't ask?" Nothing. Ask, and even if it's a no, it's the same result. Keep it moving.
Love it.
So this has been a tremendous honor and a delightful conversation. So tell the listeners how they can connect to you on. So how do you stay so consistent on social media? I got to ask you that before we take it home. You got 60,000 tweets. Like, how do you?
Oh,
What's
I've
your?
been on a long time.
Yeah,
And I find the little open spaces for that. So if I'm sitting in the car for 5 minutes, I jump on Twitter,
yeah,
tweet something. Yeah, I just kind of work it into my schedule, and I don't there's other things that I say no to that I don't do. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm go for no on Twitter, go for no Facebook, go for no on Instagram. And to me, I mean, if I can be out there, and social media has been a great way to just be there when somebody has read the book and says like, I want to say something to her. I want to be there for that. I want to hear that. And my goal is this message. I need advocates. That's what I need. I need people to be out there who are like, you need to read this book. You need this message. People like you. So thank you for what you
Absolutely.
have done sharing it. Um, and so I want to be there when they want to talk to me, basically.
Yeah, that's great, and you are there. You're so receptive, and you're definitely creating a huge influence on not only myself. You have gotten me through some many tough times where I just was on a 0-11 streak, and I've been able, Andrea, to go back to you and Richard's book and reference back to that, and it's instantly recalibrated me and got me back in the game where I could have just settled, shrugged my shoulders, and just given up. So for that, I'm grateful to both of you guys for doing this and writing that book.
Well, that's very kind, and I appreciate that. But also, you do the work, you do the hard work. So
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Sales Life, and hope we can continue this conversation in the future.
absolutely.
Thank you. Well, what did you think? As promised, I have two questions for you and a challenge. The first question is, how has going for yes stunted your growth? And the second question, what will be your first go for no moment the minute you turn off this podcast? And my challenge to you, I want you to keep a no count this week. Every day, tally up how many no's you got. And not the automatic knee-jerk no's. The no's that you ended up having to earn when your mind was trying to pull you back. And you went for it anyway. There's so much value in no. 3 come to mind. Going for no gives you experience, courage, rich opportunities. I'm pulling for you. Let me know how your progress is going. Go to marshbuice.com. That's MarshBuice. It's spelled like juice with a B in front. There in the bottom right is a mic, a link from you to me. Let me know how your progress is going and what I can do to help. I'm no hair, but I'm all ears. While you're there at marshbuice.com, there's over 1,000 free resources, videos, blogs, and of course, podcast episodes, all right there for the learning. Remember, the greatest sale that you will ever make is to sell you on you, because you're more than enough. Never settle. Keep selling your way through life, no matter what. Stay in the sales life.